All right. Good luck.
Welcome to the Central Middle School podcast. I'm Jada,
And I'm Jerry.
and today we have an exciting episode for you. We're diving into the world of literacy as liberation.
Mr. Dwight Miller is founder of the Readers and Writers Network, a non-profit organization dedicated to growing young readers through programs and social events that help foster a love for reading and writing early in young people. Raw aims to create awareness by providing books, weekly books of the week, literacy,
Literacy. You got it.
literacy tips for families and partnering with community organizations to eliminate illiteracy.
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 I know.
It's hard to pronounce.
It is a very tough
Mr. Chris Odam serves as the secondary English Language Arts Coordinator for Kansas City Public Schools and works directly with middle and high school teachers as a coach and curriculum leader. Together, they're here to share their insights and experience that can inspire us all.
So sit back, relax, and let's jump into the conversation.
What inspired you to create Readers and Writers Network?
Great question. I grew up in Kansas City. I grew up in Prairie Park Homes, just on 1542 Euclid. So I'm a city kid. Early in my life, I realized that reading was very important. It was something that my mom and my dad really stressed. So as I got older, I went to high school, I went to college, I went to graduate school. And then it became a point when I was working in my career that I wanted to give back to my community. And so that's where Readers and Writers Network came. I thought it would be important to patch young people together with people that actually write books, and to do community events, to have a lot of fun, but to put it in a reading format. And so we created a company that a lot of people have gotten behind, all based on the fact that literacy is going to take you places.
That's for both.
So,
It's for both of them. He got to answer.
well, be a different person. You can just go to the next question.
How old were you? How old were you when you knew that this was the job you wanted to do?
That's okay.
That's okay.
You can keep. It's okay. We can come back to that one.
So yeah, I'm Chris Odam.
Uh-huh.
Glad to be here. I'm the English coordinator for Kansas City Public Schools. I also grew up in Kansas City. Went to the Kansas City Public Schools. Right down the street from Parade Park is Lincoln Prep, where I was a student and I graduated in '96. So since then, I've taught in the KC Public Schools as a teacher for 16 years at Paseo. Shout out to the Pirates and all the poets that may still remember coming through those doors, and really probably a lot of poets that are still doing their thing on Vine and all over the city. So very proud and excited to have been a big part of a lot of young people's early introduction to writing, creative writing, literacy. And one of the reasons I did so is probably the way that my life started being so part of literacy. My mom was a preschool teacher and I grew up in a church. So literacy and language was just part of my life from the very start. I really appreciated people who got up in front of people and spoke and imparted, their wisdom to the world, and really, looked up to those people and kind of envisioned being one myself someday. So really like working with young people on where they're going to go when they really fall in love with language. And again, like he said, making it something fun and in participatory. So you do get a lot out of being part of that literacy process. So excited to be here.
What is literacy as liberation mean, and why is it important?
For me, literacy as liberation means that being able to master the English language can take you places that you never thought you could go. When you're able to read, you can read information that the other people can't read. So let's take, for example, that you're an athlete and you play football. Jarius, I think you said that you want to be a football player someday. Your athletic skill will only take you so far. One thing that you have to do on a collegiate level is you go to study hall and you have to read plays and you have to master those plays. Now, each one of those plays have words. They're very detailed. That if you're not a good student, if you can't read, if you're illiterate, that you're not going to be able to master those. So your athletic ability will take you so far, but then that's when your brain takes over. And so that's where literacy is literation. Really, if you use that analogy, that literacy will take you to the next level. It will liberate you from something that you never thought you could even do.
I think I would add to that when you read, you expand the vision you have of the world, and there's an idea of having doors that you can see through into new experiences that you can open with literacy. There's an idea of windows that let you peer into experiences that may or may not be like the one that you experience every day. And then there's also like mirrors. And mirrors are so important because we see ourselves back in the words and the stories we read. And today's writers are really doing a much better job of representing a lot of different characters and a lot of different options for young readers. So we really need to aggressively reintroduce people to reading and all of its benefits. Again, you can explore, you can de-stress, you can imagine, you can dream, and really you can just fill up with words, because the more you read, the more you absorb, and then the more you really impress others that you seem like a reader or you speak like you're full of words. This could be a really great thing to work on, and also to celebrate about your peers. You know, as you get older, those discussions and those college-like conversations, they're, for some reason, they're fun, you know, as you get a little bit older. So I look forward to having students feel that way when we're working on literacy.
Well, this next question is for both of you. What type of books interest you?
Interesting. For me personally, graphic novels are really the books that really interest me. We work with kids that are in between the ages of preschool and 5th grade. So their reading level is lower, and the graphics are able to paint a picture for those kids that they can then put the words to themselves. So the graphic novels I'm really, really interested in. Some of them that are some of my favorites are Dogman. That's definitely one of my favorites. I mean, that series, I hear everybody in there. It's definitely one of my favorite series. Captain Underpants. Those are very fun books as well. Just books that have characters that are unusual and creative. Those are books I really enjoy. Along with the Dogman series, one of the things that Readers and Writers does is we try to make sure that young people know that every movie starts off as a book. And so Dogman, there's a film coming out on January 31st, and if it's a part of our organization, we're going to take a group of kids to the Dogman movie. Just another added bonus that we have in our program of being able to make literacy liberate you, because some people can't even afford to go to a movie. Your moms maybe won't even allow you to go out on a Friday night. So this is just another area where literacy can liberate you. Another area of books that I really like are the books that are made by authors of color. There are books out now that the authors look just like me. They look like you. They look like Chris too. And they tell stories that are very compelling and interesting. And they're stories that just aren't just boring stories. You know, they're chapter books that make you just want to read a chapter and read a chapter and read a chapter. I also enjoy, lastly, ebooks. One of the apps that we really work with a lot is called Libby. Libby is just like Epic that maybe some of you guys have in your school. It's an app where you can go, you can plug in a book that you may like or just a topic of a book. And you can find just a bunch of books all along that topicality. If they're available at a local library, you can just go pick them up. Or if they're available on an ebook, then you can just listen to that book while you're playing basketball or you're practicing working out or before bed. So there's a lot of different types of books that are out there. And those are just 3 of my favorites.
Awesome. I think I would add poetry to the mix. Poetry's small. You can read it in not a lot of time. You can get a lot out of it. You kind of challenge yourself to really feel like what is going on in this poem. and then you really don't have to read it again. You can just go on and read something else. And so I really do attract young people sometimes to thinking again about poetry. I also love the spoken word. I was a coach of students at Paseo for a number of years, but the first 2 years we competed, we went all the way to the nationals in an experience that's called Brave New Voices. And I still remember so much the excitement and the energy that students had to read, because as soon as they became poets and voices themselves, all of those other poets that they could study were more valuable. And if you've never really opened the door to looking up spoken word or a contest like Brave New Voices, a contest like Poetry Out Loud, there's one called Louder Than a Bomb, and that's in Chicago, then all those things are not hard to make fascinating. And you'll find artists and young students who are now grown up, who were, when they were younger, found that path. And one of the things I like to do was we would study that in my classes, and everybody would look for somebody that they really fell in love with. And again, like we were talking before, we're so connectable through social media and other things that those poets do want us to learn about them and be their kind of like their customers, right? In this way that literacy is still a profession, and it's still a wonderful thing to do with your life. And I've even had students who are professional writers and poets, and not surprised based on how they started and how they fell in love, when they were younger, with a craft that is really worth your time. So check out some poets, check out, the word spoken word, look up some things on YouTube, and then really think about what would you do if you did one of those yourself. And you might be able to find a little network of poets in every school. Maybe there's one here in Central Middle that we could really get started. And I would love to be part of that group. So I know your principal also has a very poetic daughter and is a poet herself. So, if you guys are interested in doing some poetry here, to me, that's a really big part of literacy.
What were your favorite books as a kid?
Way back. Way back. So, a little bit about me. When I was in high school, I was a debater, and I did forensics in debate. So what that entails was looking at prose, looking at poetry in all different types of genres, and then coming up with your own performance from those. So I was actually a national champion debater, and that's how I got to college. So when you talk about what type of books I was reading Chaucer, which is really high level. I was reading Tchaikovsky. These are very high level poetry books. But I was reading also very simple things. I was reading Amelia Bedelia. I was reading Junie B. Jones. I thought I was a Hardy Boy, which is a series of books about some young boys who are detectives. So those are the type of things that I was reading. But in school, I was also challenging myself with some very, very hard things. There was a poetry piece that I did by Shel Silverstein that were some of my favorite poems. Just some out of the ordinary things. There's the typical books that everybody's going to have to read for class. To Kill a Mockingbird, that was one of my favorites. The Road Less Traveled. Some of the ones that you're going to read in class were actually my favorites. And so I actually was able to go to college by reading those classics. But when it came down to the books that I personally liked, man, it was just some basic books that I really enjoyed. One of my favorite books was a book called Hello, God, It's Me, Margaret. And it told a story of just adolescence and what goes on in real life. And it was a book that I remember picking this book up and being like, Mom, do you know these things happen in real life? And she's like, yeah, I do. And so it was any kind of book that I could read, that I could get my hands on, that felt real. So I would advise anybody else to do the same thing. Don't just pick one type of book and say, I like that. But just pick some, just find one and just keep going. So man, you'll find something.
Yeah, I had a fun start in the way that the library was across from my house. And I grew up in kind of where Southwest High School is now. And early days in Kansas City, Southwest High School had the public library. And so I could literally walk there. It was a little different era, I think, and I was pretty young to walk all the way there myself. But I'd come back with as many books as they'd let me have, and you could read it.
We're gonna keep it going, guys. Give us 1 second to let the students out. Hey, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. I got you guys. I'll get you in this class, but we're gonna continue. It's so powerful right now. We can't let this go. All right. So we're gonna go a little bit over time.
Appreciate y'all. All right, man. Y'all have a good day, man.
I
Have a good
appreciate
day.
you guys.
I read something today. Read something. Anything.
Thank you.
You know, reading.
There you
Thank you.
go. I remember
I
reading
forgot
one.
about
You know?
that.
That shows, yeah, that's funny how we didn't grow up in the same place, but we were watching the same things.
We were probably exposed to a lot of the same good stuff.
Isn't that something? So when we talk about literacy and liberation,
Yeah.
like, you know, he's where he is in life, I'm where I am in life because of books. And that's real talk. That's all.
Yeah. We go on this stuff.
All right.
If you could have any career in the world, what would it be? I mean, what would it be?
Wow. Well, that's a fun one.
Any career in the world. Wow. What I would be is the director of the Department of Education.
Okay.
No pressure.
None at all. But and once again, I said the director of the Department of Education. So there are different branches of government that are responsible for implementing the policies that certain areas have to abide by, right? So the Department of Education would send down basically a set of rules or guidelines, if you will, that everybody needs to follow. We all need to be doing this. Now, what other school, what they do on their own other time, and with their own other free will in their day, that kind of comes up to the school. But there are some certain guidelines. One of those guidelines I would put in is that every school, we should bring back phonics. Phonics was a form of learning reading early in the 80s. You guys learned, your mamas probably weren't even around. But it was a very fundamental method of learning reading that for some of us that are over the age of 30, 40, like some of us, we have a fundamental love for reading because we picked it up early. So I would instill phonics as the director of the Department of Education. The other thing I would do in my dream job as director of the Department of Education is I would give a lot more money to schools to be able to implement some of the things that would help schools to get to where literacy is a priority. Currently, most kids, about 40% of kids, are illiterate. Illiterate means that you cannot read at your grade level. So if you're an 8th grader and you can't read at an 8th grade level, it's very difficult for you to catch up by freshman year. So I think that's just such a clear-cut thing that we've got to address really quickly. That is my dream job as director of the Department of Education. I'm going to get on that as soon as I can.
Wow. It's a very good dream job. All right. So mine would be a little different in that I spent since I was 20 being an educator. Not that I wouldn't want to continue in that path, but I think exploring something different would be exciting. And being an artist and a musician and communicating all these things that I've learned about the world in a musical way. I've explored that a lot over my career as a teacher, kind of secretly. I would always write and perform. Being at Paseo was, really awesome chance to kind of hypothetically think, what if I was up there as those students? And then a lot of times I performed with students. And I was in some presentations, and I was definitely even doing some rapping that people would be surprised that I would even
Mr. Odam got bars?
have those skills. So practicing that my whole life anyway, when people would assume that I
You have 30 seconds until the target bell sounds.
something's forming. So I'm in a band these days, and we've been kind of getting better and better. We're up to 6 people. A trombone player that just kind of blows the roof off as soon as we hear him go. I am the lyrics, and I am kind of the poet behind the magic. We're now called Survive the Fire, so we even have kind of a cool name, and it comes from a very personal place in my life. And all my fellas are with me, and we're surviving together through music. So if that could ever, in a dream way, turn into a profession, I would certainly respect all the people who do that for a living. I know it's not just an easy way, to make an income. But it would be for sure the most rewarding, because I see those folks and I am slightly jealous, that is their art form, and that is so much also literacy and communicating and sharing power with the world, and then even making a good income at it sometimes. So what a dream to be able to do all those things at the same time. I'm definitely jealous of some of those amazing musicians that are also doing literacy.
Mr. Odam,
You.
You mentioned in your Better Lessons bio that you are a published poet.
Right?
Can you explain how the process of writing helped you to become published?
Definitely. When I was younger, I looked up to people that I never realized I would maybe be like, but they were the poets that I saw as like celebrities or people that you could never even turn into. But then as I got older, I took them as teachers, had them as friends, became more peers than I ever knew, and shared my work with them and felt connected. And then it is really about forming those networks of artists and people who help you feel like you're on the right path or help you know what the path might even be. And so, I submitted some poems along in the past, and you don't necessarily learn why or why not you're not getting into their magazines, but you keep trying, and then you might meet some people, and you might have a door that's kind of offered to you, depending on who that literary person is that's looking at your poetry. And that was exciting. So I'm still proud of those first and early submissions. I still work on my work when I need to, because it's really an outlet for me, and a place that I can work on my own thinking about the world. But I also like to just record in my poetry, what maybe other people don't always see, what we always pass by, or just kind of some of those private moments. And there's a lot to write about all around us in Kansas City if you stop and pay attention. So keep writing those poems, keep hanging on to them. They kind of go up in value when you get older and you look back on them, because you'll be surprised you were better than you thought you were. We're always too hard on ourselves. So share your work with people, and you might be surprised that they like it.
All right. Do one last question for Mr. Miller, and then you can go ahead and
That's
go
the last
after
one.
him. Oh, is that the last one? Look at that.
Mr. Miller, can you go into detail as to what a nonprofit is and does?
Sure. A non-for-profit company, we exist solely to give every dollar that we get back into the community. That's the long and short of it. In my day job, I'm a government employee. I work in finance for Broadridge Financial Solutions. So it's important for me to be able to spread some of this knowledge that I have back into the community. And how I felt the best way to do that is by designing a company that could do so. One major way we do that is by creating special events. One special event that we have that we'd like to invite you, anybody else that you know out to, is going on November 23rd at the Miriam Plaza Library. It's a Thanksgiving or a giving thanks party for kids. We'll do lots of crafts. It's from 10 to 12 that day. We'll play Thanksgiving bingo, where we've reached out to basically every bookstore, independent and large-owned bookstore in the area. They've given us lots of prizes for Thanksgiving bingo. And then we have an exclusive reading of 'Twas the Night Before Thanksgiving by the author who made Captain Underpants and Dogman. So we'll do that reading. We've got goodie bags. And so that's what our non-for-profit does. We want to integrate ourselves into the community with the whole holistic view that literacy is going to be able to take you places.
Well, thank you so much for teaching us and for this.
And thank you guys as well.
Have a good day, y'all. Mr. Odam?
Odam.
Odam? I heard you talking about band. See, I love band. Yes, I played the baritone. I was a tromboner, but then I switched to baritone because I wanted to try something new.
Fantastic.
What's your favorite instrument?
Definitely the piano. And I think when you sit at a piano, you're lucky because it's already all laid out for you. And I can just be mystified by people that can play guitars and things. But definitely the piano. And then second, hard choice would be the drums. For some reason, to play both hands, both feet, and sometimes, use your brain that
Gotta
way.
stay focused.
It's fun. It opens you up. You feel so alive and so free that if you've never tried drums,
I tried.
you tried it. Are you good?
That's nice.
I'd like to hear you.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Thank you all so much. We really appreciate you coming in.
It's been great. All right. Good job, y'all.
Awesome. Great job.